Welcome, Jen, to Fast to Heal Stories. It's so delightful to have you here. I know I was on one of your podcasts a couple of years ago, but oh my gosh, so many things have happened for both of us since then. And it's so wonderful to interview you because you are definitely one of the biggest inspirations to get me started in the work that I'm doing now. And I know the first book that I read that just opened my eyes into intermittent fasting and the world of insulin resistance was the obesity
Hmm.
code, and there just
Right.
wasn't much out there. So yours was the next one, delay, don't deny. And I was like, I love this because it's so practical and
Hmm.
easy to read. And then yeah, I told my story on your podcast, and you've had, well, we should say it was three books come out since then. We were talking before we were recording, and I kind of missed the Feast Without Fear, but that's out.
That came
Fast
out in
Feast Repeat.
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a while ago. Fast Feast Repeat and Cleanish. So,
Right.
and then by the time this airs, your latest book will have been released, 28-day fast start day by day. So exciting. So you can go and get that. But yeah, tell us what the heck you've been up to, and we'll start there, and then we'll dive into your newest book.
All right. Well, awesome. Yeah, I'm just still in the world of spreading all things intermittent fasting. Just as you know, intermittent fasting really just changes everything with the way that we relate to food, our bodies, and just it's like the most life-changing experience I've ever been through. And then of course, I had to share it with everybody. And so, I started as an elementary school teacher and lost 80 pounds with intermittent fasting back in 2014 to 2015. And here I am going through my 10th holiday season as an intermittent faster. And there's no stress in the holiday season. I'm not starting a diet in January. I'm not like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. And, since I've been spreading the message of intermittent fasting, I retired from teaching and I write books and I podcast and I have a community where I support people who are intermittent fasters. And it feels like a miracle that I am able to do this work.
That's wonderful. And one of the reasons people are so drawn to you is because they love your story, they love
Mhm.
your personality. But yeah, like you said, this is year 10. It's
Yeah.
not like you've been doing this for 10 days or 10 weeks or 10 months. I mean, it is a long haul solution. And I think that's what just opens so many people's eyes. And we thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I would think pretty much everybody listening to this podcast knows your story and the work that you do, because if they found fasting and intermittent fasting, they have found you. So it is so fun to be talking with you. So let's talk about that new book that's coming
Okay.
out. So again, it's called 28-day fast start day by day. So different. You were showing me kind of the pictures of it, and
Mhm.
because at the time of this recording, I couldn't get my hands on it quite
Right.
yet.
It doesn't come out till December 26th, and we're recording this on December 14th. So
Yes, yeah. So a
it's
little bit ahead
available
of
for
time.
pre-order today, but when people are listening, it's available now. Yeah.
Yes, which is beautiful. So, but I did read the premise about what it's about. So let's break it down. Like,
Okay.
what's the inspiration? And we were looking and saying it's kind of like a workbook, a book and
Well,
a
it's got
workbook two in
workbook
one.
pieces in it. It's not completely a workbook, but the clue for why I wrote it is in the subtitle. It's the ultimate guide to starting or restarting your intermittent fasting lifestyle so it sticks. And I'll go back to the backstory of talking to my editor and my editor at my publisher and also my agent after Fast Feast Repeat came out and it was a New York Times bestseller. Clearly, both my agent and my editor were like, all right, we're going to write more books. What is the next intermittent fasting book you are going to write? And I said, I'm not going to write another intermittent fasting book because Fast Feast Repeat has everything. I mean, it's got comprehensive guide in the title. It really does have everything you need. Questions you don't even know you have yet are all answered in there. It's good for someone who's brand new, but it's also good for someone who's been fasting for years. You're going to learn something. And, I wrote it so many years ago, I would probably relearn some things if I read
Yeah,
it again,
yeah.
truthfully. It's been a long time since I read it myself. And even though I wrote it. And so my book after Fast Feast Repeat, I got a 2-book deal with my publisher, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to write 2 more books, but I don't know what they'll be, but I'm not gonna write anything unless I really want to write it. So that's where Cleanish came in, the book after Fast Feast Repeat. And it's not an intermittent fasting book. It's eat mostly clean, live mainly clean, and unlock your body's natural ability to self-clean. Most of us on an intermittent fasting journey find that we suddenly start, craving different foods, and we want to clean up other areas of our lives. So that's where Cleanish came in. And it's a really good book. I'm proud of it. But a funny thing happened, like readers were like, this is not an intermittent fasting book. Like, I don't read negative reviews because they hurt my feelings. But some of them were like, I wanted a book on fasting. This is not a fasting book at all. It's got a
That's
little
what
bit
you need to stick to. Yeah.
well, and I was like, that's interesting, but it's still a really good book. I'm proud that I wrote it. And anybody who hasn't read it, if you're interested in cleaning up your life and it feels daunting and you're not sure why do you need different, personal care products? Why do you need to look for organic foods when you can? What little changes can you make that are not overwhelming, and how can you go step by step? So it's really not, daunting if you take it bit by bit. But and then I was like, well, I don't really know what other book to write. And I'm just kind of not sure, but when it comes to me, I'll know. In the meantime, I've been running my community. I started with my very first little bitty Facebook community in 2015, and now I'm completely off of Facebook with a private membership community. And one thing really, when I'm in the smaller private membership community, suddenly, it's not as busy as a Facebook group with 500,000 combined members in all my different groups. And it was like, you just were trying to keep things on the rails, right? But you know how Facebook is. But suddenly in this smaller private group, I really am in tune with the struggles people are having. And I really get a handle on what's going on. And I realized how many people stop. They quit. They do it for a while. They have success. They feel good. And then for some reason they quit. And then they come back to it. And some people are caught in that cycle of starting over, starting over, starting over. And I get it. I was in that cycle prior to 2014. I first heard about intermittent fasting in 2009, and it didn't stick for me until 2014. All those years I knew about it, but it didn't stick. And it was because I didn't understand. I didn't understand the health benefits, because back in the day, the only thing they said is intermittent fasting works because it allows you to eat fewer calories. That was it. That's all we thought. And so I didn't understand about becoming metabolically flexible and being fat adapted and all the health benefits. And even if you're just, fasting 14 hours a day, you're still going to get health benefits. You might not lose weight, but you don't want to stop. You want to always incorporate some intermittent fasting in your life. So if I'd understood all that back in 2009, I think it would have made a big difference. And also the clean fast, which we can talk about later. But I also realized that a lot of people had Fast Feast Repeat, like they got the book Fast Feast Repeat, and maybe even they read the whole thing, but it was so comprehensive that by the time they were done, they're like, I don't even know what I read. And one thing that my background as an elementary teacher taught me is that the importance of scaffolding and schema. These are education terms, but in your brain, when you learn new content, but you have no experience in that area, like if I tried to go read a book on, electrical engineering, I would only understand this much of it, right? I use electricity every day. I'm not an expert in electricity. So I wouldn't understand that book at all because I don't have the background knowledge. And so with intermittent fasting, same thing is true. When people start and they're brand new and they read Fast Feast Repeat, it's also new that some of it sticks, but not all of it. And so I thought we need another book for the first 28 days that walks people through day by day and isn't giving you everything. You don't need everything on day one. So that's where the idea came up. And I was like, the teacher in me said, all right, we got to go back and we have to start slower and really get people, because the first 28 days are so important, and the common problems I was seeing people having, like they would start, they would join the community, they would be on day 14, and then something would happen. They would maybe go on a vacation, or it was the holiday or something. They had the cold or the flu or something, and then they quit. And then they're like, I'm back, I'm starting over. And I'm like, you're not starting over. You had 3 days where you were on a vacation. That's not starting over. So From the very beginning of the new book, I'm planting the seed that you are starting a lifestyle, and this is not something you're going to start and stop. You're going to keep going. You're going to do what you can. You're going to develop the habits. And so it's really, big on the science of habit creation, plus, understanding enough of why we do intermittent fasting, a little bit day by day of what you need to know. Like early on, you learn about the clean fast because that's really important. Early on, you learn about becoming fat adapted because that's really important. And, I'm directing people to fast, feast, repeat. Like if you want to know more about the health benefits, here's the chapter of fast, feast, repeat to go to. But I can't put everything in this book. It's got a lot in there, but it's just what you need when you need it. Like before you even start, there's a section on, crafting your why, creating a why statement. And I'm also planting the seed early on that intermittent fasting is more than just weight loss. We understand people want to lose weight if they need to lose weight. I get it. That's why I came to intermittent fasting. But the more we learn about it, you talked about finding it through the lens of the obesity code and correcting insulin resistance. We understand it's so much more than weight loss. Another thing I realized over the years is that people who begin intermittent fasting with the idea of, I just want to lose weight as fast as I can, I'm doing intermittent fasting for weight loss, that's it. If that's your only why, you are less likely to be successful long term. And I'm going to say that again. If your only why is I want to lose weight as quickly as I can, and then I'm going to quit intermittent fasting and just maintain another way, intermittent fasting is not right for you right now. When you start intermittent fasting, you need to start it because you understand it's going to do so much more for you than help your body release the weight that it needs to lose. It's not going to be the fastest way you could lose weight. I could tell you 20 more ways to lose weight more quickly. Of course, none of those are going to be sustainable, right? You're going to gain it back. It's going to be a struggle. We've all been down those roads. I was the yo-yo forever. I yo-yo up and down until I was 210 pounds. Intermittent fasting is the only time I have not yo-yoed back up. So having a powerful why, like aging well, longevity, healing insulin resistance, reversing diabetes, healing chronic conditions that you didn't even know you could heal, feeling better in your body, food freedom, losing the diet brain. Those are all powerful reasons to start an intermittent fasting lifestyle.
So many things to touch on there, but just going back to the title itself, it's like starting and restarting. Like that is a key thing here because, with my community also, I have so many people coming, they go through my program, they come back to, like, I have a little app that my students can voice memo or text me on. They're like, Shanna, I went completely off the rails, just like you said.
Right.
You were talking about, and now I'm ready to get back. Like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know, like, I don't even know where to start. And so I'm like, okay, well, you go back to the basics. You go back to,
Right.
we have to start bringing that insulin down because that's priority number one. We're not going to snack. We're going to start, looking at an eating window, and we're not going to eat at night. Like, let's start there. But I think that this book will be so important because it's for beginners, but it's for people who have fallen off the wagon too.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times, depending on what resource they're familiar with or who they were working with, sometimes the protocol that they've tried to implement is not what protocol they should be starting with, or they're trying to jump in, like they're really ill. They have really wonky blood sugars. They have really high insulin, and they're trying to start like some longer fast right off the
Right.
bat, and it's failing for them. And they come to you, they come to me, and this intermittent fasting doesn't work for me. Like they've tried it for maybe 2 weeks, didn't see, like you said, the results that they were thinking that they would see, and it just doesn't work for them. So I love this book, and I love that it's a resource for people restarting it because there are a bajillion people out there who
And I didn't
are
realize how
starting
many
and
there
stopping.
were until I really settled into the community and started, paying attention to what people were saying. And the whole idea that, the idea of starting over is such diet mentality, right?
Yes,
I'm going to start over on Monday. I'm going to start over January 1st. I'm going to start over as soon as, this stress is behind me. The stress is never behind you. There's
right.
always another holiday. There's always going to be another eating experience. There's always a reason to quit if you give it to yourself. But if in your mind, one thing I learned from James Clear in his book Atomic Habits, what we tell ourselves in our minds is so powerful. And, if we think of intermittent fasting as a habit, like brushing our teeth, getting a good night's sleep, we don't stop brushing our teeth because we got a cavity, right? We're like, well, I got a cavity, that brushing didn't work for me. We don't stop doing it. We realize that these habits, we do these habits every day. But what I was going to say is, he says, what you tell yourself you are, like your identity,
Mhm.
really, really matters. So if you tell yourself, I am an intermittent faster, that's it. I'm an intermittent faster. You don't quit what you are. I am a podcaster. You are a podcaster. I am a writer. We do the things that match our identity. So if you craft your identity as I am an intermittent faster, it's what I do. Now, it's not like a prison sentence. You're not locked in. I had what I jokingly called a 24-hour eating window back in the fall. We traveled, we were in San Francisco, and we took the red eye. And I tend to be a queasy flyer. I get nauseous and that sort of thing. And also I was hungry. And so I'm like, I'm going to eat. We ate at the airport before we boarded. And then when we got in Atlanta, we had a layover and it was morning. And I was like, well, now I'm really, really hungry because I didn't sleep all night. So I ate again. Like literally, I think I had a 24-hour eating window because I didn't really pause. Did I quit? No. Did I have to restart? No. Did I fail? No. What did I do the next day? I just went back to what I do every other day. After I got some sleep, woke up at home, I opened my window at my normal time. It was no big deal because I am an intermittent faster, and it's not a big deal.
Absolutely. There's so much power in that too.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said before, that it's just stuck for, I mean, it's 10 years. It's the same with
Yeah.
me. Like now I think it's been five-ish years that I've been an intermittent faster, and just, I know I don't tolerate carbohydrates very well. So I've implemented that strategy because I just feel so much better. But I honestly, I can count on one hand, or maybe about a handful of times that I've eaten more than twice in a day for reasons like you said, like you're traveling, there's something out of the ordinary, it's a holiday, not because I have told myself, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. Like this is not flexible enough. It's just like I eat twice, I'm done. Like I don't need any more nourishment than that because I've now leveled out blood sugars, I've leveled out insulin. I had insulin resistance and I reversed it. And yeah, so you get to the other side and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you get to the other side and you realize all of the things that you said. Like I don't think about food all the time. I'm not having cravings. This is a lifestyle that I can maintain. There's not any one singular food other than maybe food sensitivities or food,
Like
foods that,
allergies.
yeah, allergies that you absolutely cannot eat for the rest of your life. So I love that. I love all of those topics. Well, let's break down your book a little bit. And of course, I don't have the copy here right here in front of me, but it looks like there's entry speeds that
Well,
you
yeah.
talk about first. There's easy does
Just like
it.
in
Yeah.
fast feast repeat. So I haven't, like, it's not like changed or different from fast feast repeat. It's just like holding your hand through that first 28 days, because there's a 28-day fast start chapter in fast feast repeat, but it's like, this much of the book, and
Yeah, yeah.
and then there's everything else surrounding it. But those 3 speeds are right there in fast feast repeat as well. And there's like a quiz you take, but I put that in the fast start book as well. So there's a quiz you take, and you don't have to take the quiz if you don't want to, but it like directs you. Are you someone that needs to really ease in? We've got the easy does it approach. We've got an in the middle kind of approach, and then we've got a rip off the Band-Aid. But even on the rip the Band-Aid off approach, you're not starting with 19.5 on day 1. For example, you're still easing in somewhat and letting your body adapt. And one thing that I'm really focusing on in the day by day, the new one, is that it's not going to be easy at first. When you're brand new to intermittent fasting, you're not going to like wake up on day 2 and be like, this is the best I've ever felt in my life. No,
Yeah.
you might wake up on day 2 hangry and you're like, I feel terrible, because your body is learning how to do something new. And so I really tried to let everybody know what weird things to expect as your body is adapting and getting used to intermittent fasting. And then at the end, actually every single day, you start the day and you're like, all right, which approach am I following today? And you like just checking in of what you're supposed to do that day. And then at the end of the day, you're like, well, how did today go? You just check in briefly. It's not a lot. But at the end of every week, you do a check-in as well. And you're like, all right, what plan did I follow last week? Like maybe last week you followed the in the middle plan. And you're like, well, how was that? Well, it seemed just right. All right, you're going to stick with that next week and you're going to ramp up your fasting just a little bit. But maybe you started with the in the middle plan and it just was like no big deal. You're like, I think I could do more. So you can switch over to the rip the band-aid off approach for week 2. Or maybe you started with the in the middle plan and it was just too much. You're like, it's hard. You can scale back. So at all times you're checking in with yourself and you're like, am I on the right pace? Do I need to ramp it up a little? Do I need to kind of slow down? And, not thinking about any of it as a failure. It's just a learning experience. This was too much for me. Oh, or I can do a little more. And so it's really guiding you day by day to listen to your body, even through the hard parts, knowing that part is normal, checking in. And also, what did you do when it felt hard? I drank a clean, fast approved beverage. I took a walk, whatever it might be. How did you handle the difficulties? Just again, planting all those seeds in your head as you're going along that you can get through this. Here are some strategies.
Yeah, I love that because so many people want to ask you or ask me, like, what's your fasting protocol? What do
Right.
you eat in a day? Which is very helpful. People are learning and it's nice to look at, things that are working for people, but we're in a very different, you've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this for 5 years. So
Right.
for somebody to say, oh, I'm going to do what Shanna does, I'm going to do what Jen did, like, this is what Jen does, I'm doing this. Like it may or may not work for them depending on where they're at. So I think that's just so important to have different options for people and depending on where they're at. Like if you have somebody eating 300 grams of carbohydrate and eating for 14 hours a day versus somebody who's tried to implement some things, they're further along in their path or journey. It's just nice to have options. So you're not like, okay, do this on day one for
Yeah.
sure and do this. So I love that. And then it looks like so mid-month, you talk about the apostat, the appetite
Yeah,
thermostat.
we talk about
Talk
the
about that a
appetite
little bit.
correction, hunger
Yep.
hormones, and that's one of the things that Dr. Burt Herring came up with the words appetite correction in a book that he wrote in maybe 2015. I can't remember when he
Yeah,
wrote it.
it's been a
Something around
while.
there. It's maybe 2016. It might have been. I can't remember when he wrote it, but that phrase is powerful because we're all born with working hunger and satiety signals. If you've ever been around a baby
Mhm.
who's they let you know they need to eat and they need to eat around the clock. And when they're full, they stop. The baby's like, done.
Yep.
And a hungry baby is not going to stop till you feed it. And a baby who's had enough is not going to have one more drop. And so along the way, we lose touch with our hunger and satiety signals. Many, many reasons why we do. We could talk about that probably for 5 hours, but ultra processed foods, eating at set meal times, finish everything on your plate, all of those things. The diet culture we've all been exposed to, counting calories, all of those things have taught us to ignore hunger. It's bad to be hungry and to feel full after you eat. That's bad. You should not ever feel full, right? Wait too much. Or, it's bad to not count your calories. So we've gotten away from trusting ourselves to know when we've had enough and to also know when we're hungry and when we need to eat more. Because that's another thing some people
Mhm.
struggle with, even as intermittent fasters. They see hunger as a problem. Like someone will make a post in the community and they'll say, I was really, really hungry today. What did I do wrong? And why did that happen? I'm like, that is a normal human experience to have hungrier days. It could be because your monthly cycle. It could be because you didn't
Mhm.
eat enough yesterday. It could be because you exercised a little bit more. It could be because the weather changed. It could be
Mhm.
so many reasons. But part of appetite correction is acknowledging some days you need to eat more instead of like it's a problem that has to be solved. You're not bad because today you're hungrier. You're like, okay, I'm hungrier today. Let's think about that. It might be because you didn't nourish your body well yesterday.
Mhm.
But again, that's not like because you were bad. It's just like, yesterday I had a holiday party and we had snacky foods at this holiday party and I didn't nourish my body well. So today I'm hungrier. well, that's interesting. I'm going to really make a point to nourish my body better today. So as we go along the path with intermittent fasting, you're not going to feel that appetite correction. You're not going to understand when you've had enough yet on day 1 or even day 14 or even maybe by day 28. But understanding that eventually one day you'll be eating your dinner and halfway through you'll say, I'm full. And that'll feel foreign to you. And then you'll stop eating because you've had enough. And then finally you're hearing it again. You're hearing your body communicate that to you.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that that process takes a while for some
Yes,
people.
it does.
And I mean, hormones, some people who are coming into this, hormones have been out of whack for
Mhm.
decades. So to expect them to just correct themselves within a
No.
couple of days is not feasible. And
And
I was
food
one of those
quality.
people. Yeah, food
Food
quality
quality
for
matters
sure.
a lot when it comes to hearing your satiety signals, because if you're just eating ultra processed foods, that's not going to satisfy your body's needs for nourishment. And then your body, like you could eat like a Big Mac and fries and a Coke, and that's a lot of calories. And if we're just following the traditional, idea of all that matters is the calories, you'll be like, I ate plenty of food. I shouldn't still be hungry. But you're hungry because your body is like, there were zero nutrients there. Those were empty calories. I need some nutrients. And learning to understand and interpret what your body is asking for is an important part of the process.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so it takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen in a few weeks.
Right.
It really, a lot of it depends on the approaches that you're taking, like you said, the nourishment,
Mhm,
and also how long standing have your issues been? Like
mhm.
if it's been like, oh, I'm just starting to get weight creep for the first time in my life, or something's just kind of shifting hormonally, but I've never had issues before, versus somebody who's I can remember in fourth grade being the person, like that
Right.
unhealthy, and my family has been unhealthy for 40 years. Like it's going to take a lot longer. But like you said, all of a sudden it happens. And I never had a big weight issue, but I thought about food all the time. I, ate from the time I got up. It was healthy food, but until I went to bed, I couldn't understand why I had to run 20 miles a week plus strength training just to maintain my weight. And all of a sudden, for the first time in over 40 years, it's same, like I'm working in the afternoon. I'm like, I have not thought about food for like five
Right.
hours. That is record for me. And then my husband used to go, hunting and sit out in the tree all day. And I'd be like, I don't understand how you're not coming in for lunch at like this, like right at noon. Like, how can you sit out there for so long? And then all of a sudden it happened for me. And I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And it is. It's just one of those honest, and I've said this before on the podcast. That's for me was the biggest positive that came out of this. Just not thinking about food all the time and finding a place of like food freedom, food peace, whatever you want to call it. And I don't consider food freedom eating whatever the heck you want all the time. Like that's not food freedom to me. Food freedom is like nourishing your body well, feeling well, like you said, getting to a state of feeling satiety and fullness,
Right.
but not like you're gonna like pop out of your pants kind of fullness, just
Right.
like feeling well and nourished, and then going the rest of the day like, oh, I feel great. I'm not thinking about food all the time, and that place takes a while to get to, but so many women just maybe haven't experienced that in so long, sadly. And I was one of them. I mean, it'd probably been 20 years since I actually, didn't think about food all the time. And, that's quite honestly, that's probably why I went into the field that I was, like I was so obsessed with food and nutrition and, and
Yeah.
everything. And now I'm like, actually can teach the methods that you're not obsessive. So it's a beautiful thing that happens. And then at the end of the 28 days, you're talking about master the delay. So let's touch on that a little bit, and what to expect. And of course, like you already iterated, it's not like you just get to day 28 and like, oh, okay, like this is it. Like
Right.
I made it to day 28. I'm not going to have any issues. But yeah,
Right.
talk
No, it's
about
it's
the end.
definitely a process, and at the end, I actually encourage people to commit to to a year, right? Commit to the rest of the year. You're not going to stop for any reason unless you're pregnant,
Right.
or you have some sort of illness and your doctor you can't fast. I don't know what that might be, but obviously, if there's a medical reason you can't fast, you can fast. But other than that, you're not going to stop. You're going to commit to celebrating your first fast anniversary. and they're already 1/12 of the way there. So, and that's, when you realize you're already a 12th of the way there, you're like, I can do this. I'm not going to quit. And as far as like mastering the delay, my first book was called Delay, Don't Deny. And that really is the key, is you're just delaying what you're eating, right? And I get it. If you're stuck in diet mentality and maybe you're someone who is eaten emotionally, and there are a lot of people, I mean, we're trained like that as infants, right? You're crying, they feed you. You're a toddler and you're having a hard day, they give you a cookie, right? You go to the doctor's office and get shots, they give you a sucker, or at least they did when we were little. But we've been trained to use food to soothe us. So now you're doing intermittent fasting, you're not using food and beverages to soothe you during the day. So you have to master the delay. You're not having the food or the beverages you're used to. You just delay it until later. So we've all done the deny before. We've all done the diets where it's like you're denying yourself and you're eating those small meals all day and you're never satisfied. Never. You always feel just yucky when you're on one of those low calorie diets, and it never gets easier. It just gets harder and harder over time. But when we're delaying, we know we can have a satisfying meal later. We know we can nourish our bodies well. We're going to feel satisfied and good. We're just delaying it. So, I kind of talk about, you either have to delay or you have to deny, right? If you're going to reach your goals for health, do you want to just delay till later? Or do you want to go down that road of denial that you've been down so many times before? And it's just so much easier to tell yourself, I can have this later. If you're at work and there's donuts in the break room, sometimes people have a really hard time. They're like, I like donuts. Everyone else is eating the donuts. I want to eat a donut. And you feel like I'm missing out. There's that toddler brain, I want it now. I want it now. Instead, you just tell yourself, no, I'm going to take a donut and I'm going to put it in this Ziploc baggie. When I was a teacher, I had Ziploc baggies in my cabinet. I would pull them out. And so you put that donut in the Ziploc baggie, you put it in your desk drawer, you put it in your purse. You're like, I can have that later when my window is open. And then when your window is open, I don't recommend you start with a donut because you'll feel awful if the first thing you eat is a donut. But you probably, after you've had a nutritious meal, that donut that's been in that baggie is probably no longer going to appeal to you. You can have it if you want. You delayed that donut, but I can't think of, that doesn't sound good. Now you no longer want it. You delayed it. You can have it, but you might not want it. And then you feel like, wow, that feels powerful. So mastering the delay is really, really important, because if we can't, give in to every feeling that we've got, because that's what got us into this trouble in the first place. When I was 210 pounds, it was because if I felt hungry or uncomfortable, I soothed it with a latte, or I was hungry, so I had a snack right in that moment. And I actually felt like anxious if I thought I wouldn't be able to eat. Like let's say I forgot to take my lunch to school one day before I was an intermittent faster. I would be panicked. Like, what am I going to do at lunchtime? I'm going to have to eat in the cafeteria. Could I order a pizza? What am I going to have? But instead you're like, no big deal. I am an intermittent faster. Hunger is not an emergency. I don't need to eat at lunchtime, and I don't eat at lunchtime, and it's not a problem. I just delay, and then I have what really sounds good and what really nourishes my body.
Yeah, I was the same way. And I've
Mhm.
mentioned this a couple times too, like when I was deciding if I wanted to be in the world of nutrition anymore. I was a substitute teacher for 3 years. Wow. I mean,
That's hard.
it's a crazy, crazy world. I have so much appreciation for
Oh, and
teachers
subbing is
now.
way harder than regular teaching because they like
Oh, oh,
pull
they
one
just,
over on you.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, then I did some long-term subbing because they figured out like I could hold my own, and then all of a
Right.
sudden I'm like, I'm a dietitian. I don't know how I am like subbing for kids for three for 3 months while the teacher's on maternity leave.
Right.
It was crazy. But same thing. When I think I was already intermittent fasting by then, but it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring this or that, or I forgot. Like I used to panic if I got stuck in traffic, or
Right.
like my errands were taking longer than I thought they would. I was like, oh, I didn't bring a snack. I did And now it's like I don't even keep food in my car ever. I think I
Yeah, me
have
neither.
gum in there, but I don't I don't have food in there because I'm like, it's not a big deal. I'm not gonna die. Like I
Right.
am really, I'm okay. Like, yeah, and even if I'm really hungry, that'll pass in 20 minutes and then I'll wonder why the heck did I think I needed to eat so like right there. But yeah, that comes with time for sure. And I think it's just especially hard because of course we live in a culture of instant gratification
Yeah.
for everybody, kids, adults, toddlers, you said, but it's like
Yeah.
kids, adults, elderly. I mean, it's like you want it, you get it. And that's just the
Yeah.
culture we live in. So it's just it teaches you the delay don't deny concept and mastering the delay teaches you so much about yourself too,
Oh, and it's
because
everything too. It's not
yeah.
just food. You start to learn, like, I'm sitting here, I've got my iPhone here. It's an iPhone 12. I used to get a new iPhone every year, right? Every year I'm like, "Oh, I need the new whatever it is." But now I'm like, "Yeah, you start to delay other things too." And it really carries over just in your life. You're like, "Do I need a new purse? No. Do I need I'm still wearing the Uggs that I bought in
Yeah.
2018." I mean, whatever. You just realize you don't need it now. And so it rolls over into like so many aspects of your life that you really can't believe it. Intermittent fasting changes us in ways we never expected it would change it.
It's funny you say that about the iPhone because the only reason I'll get a new iPhone is if because like my battery's dead or like
Yeah.
I won't hold a charge or something. I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't want the new one. Like
I
I'm
used
good
to get
with
a new
this
one every
one.
year.
Oh,
I
and
always
I was
got the new
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Not
that's
anymore.
funny. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like you don't need it, so why? Okay, so a couple more questions and then we'll close out. But and these were a couple that I pulled my Instagram community, and of course there was
Awesome.
a whole a whole list of them. But I just picked out a couple that were kind of repeated. And one of the things was, of course, because I get asked this a lot too, like, what's your fasting protocol? What do you do?
Right.
So people want to know, like, is your fasting protocol the same as it was 10 years ago? Paul, how has that evolved? And
Mhm.
in that 10 years, have you ever, and I know you've talked about the pants that you have, like the account, I think you call them the
My honesty
accountability
pants.
pants, the honesty pants, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of your way to make sure you're staying on track. But in that 10 years, like how has your fasting protocol evolved? And have you ever like fallen off the wagon yourself and been like, holy crap, like what I gotta get back on track here.
No, I mean, I don't think of it ever as falling off the wagon. I like to call it window creep because that's
Mhm.
what has happened in a few times over the pandemic. I started having window creep, obviously in 2020 when we're at home, and then my husband was at home, and now we're like baking muffins every night. We were all like mesmerized into that for whatever reason, drinking a lot of cocktails. So, I've had periods of window creep like that. But I never have stopped fasting, never would stop fasting because I feel so good when I do it. And so, there were that time I had the window creep, and then when we moved here we live at the beach now. We are full time at the beach. We sold our home in Augusta and moved here. And when we moved here, I had a little window creep because I felt like I was on vacation every day. And so, yeah, because we moved here, it was June of 20 what year is it? 2022. June of 2022, we were full time at the beach. And so I had, obviously been visiting. We already had our little beach place, but I was like, okay, I'm on vacation every day. I'm going to get onto this bar and have a beer in the afternoon and then I was like, wait a minute. No, I live here now. Every day is not a vacation. So I had to work on that window creep for that time as well. But, I always can tell when I've had window creep because my
Mhm.
honesty pants get a little tight. I don't weigh. I haven't weighed myself since, let's see, 2017. Like I weighed the entire first year
Mhm.
after I weighed the whole time that I was losing weight. I talk about in Fast Feast Repeat in the Scale Schmale chapter, weighing daily, calculating your weekly average. So I did that. I knew what my trend was doing the entire time I was losing weight. And then I weighed for the entire first year of maintenance. And then I put my scale away and I just did my thing for a year. I didn't weigh for a year. And then I lost 2 jean sizes over that year. And so I was feeling pretty slim and like obviously I'm slimmer. I've lost 2 jean sizes. I bet I weigh, and I had a number in my head that I thought I weighed. And I pulled my scale down and I got on it. And I like basically weighed what I weighed the last time. Like I had body recomposition. I'd lost more fat and built muscle, whatever, but I was slimmer than I had been, but the scale didn't reflect what I thought it should say. So I was mad. So on that day, and then I was mad that I was mad because I was like, I don't want to get smaller, but I would have liked to have seen that number on the scale that I thought I needed. So I threw my scale in the trash and I haven't seen a number since then. And that was in 2017. So I don't weigh, but I can always tell in my genes and how they feel. And, as far as like how my approach has changed at the very beginning, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I remember early on making all these plans and even like over the, maintenance early in my maintenance, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if I get on the scale and it's between 130, whatever, and this is be my protocol. And like, I thought I needed all these plans and, all that's out the window. And I don't even really, I don't track my window. I never tracked my fast. I was always someone who tracked my eating window. But, sometimes I'll be like, all right, what time did I open? What time is it now? And I'll just kind of check in with myself. But it's really no big deal. Like today I go to trivia every Thursday night with a group of friends and I eat there. And often I won't eat it all till I get there. And I'll end up with a shorter window on trivia night versus maybe the next day I'll open a little earlier. Maybe I'll have a 6-hour window. It just ebbs and flows and it's no big deal. And so I just don't even really think about it anymore.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I ask a lot too about apps, like how can I track my fasting? What's your favorite app? I'm like, honestly, I've never used it. I just don't, I just didn't ever want to. Like, yeah, I kind of knew in my head when I had eaten, when I had stopped eating, but it's not like I was like, oh, it's been 17 hours and 43 minutes. I have to wait 17 more
Right.
minutes before I can eat. Like I was just not like that. And like I said, like I eat 2 meals. I think you probably are you still doing mostly one meal on
Well, see,
sometimes? And
I
I don't
almost
know.
would, if I could go back in time, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously we can't, but if I could go back in time, I just really don't even want to define it that
Right.
strictly, right? Like, am I eating one meal? Am I eating a snack and a meal? Am I eating 2 meals? It doesn't matter. The goal is to eat until you're satisfied, whatever that looks like to you. And, I do not have like one eating opportunity where I eat for 1 hour on one plate of food, unless like tonight I'm at trivia and that's how it works out. But I don't eat at normal breakfast time pretty much ever. I don't eat at normal lunchtime pretty much ever. I start eating in the afternoon at some point, and whatever time that looks like varies depending on my schedule. So there's, maybe I have what someone else would call a lunch, but I'm having it at 3 o'clock, but maybe it's a hearty snack, maybe not. But then I have like one sit down meal. I cook dinner for my husband and for me every night, unless I'm at trivia or I have something
Yeah.
going on. But, I eat one, what I would call actual meal. And then, the snacking kind of, sometimes I more like graze through a certain period of the afternoon because I'll eat a little something and then I'm still hungry. And then
Mhm.
I don't ever say, oh, I can't eat right now. I'm going to wait till dinner. No, if I'm hungry, I eat. If it's afternoon and I'm hungry and I want to eat, it's an opportunity to eat until I feel satisfied and I feel like I've had enough.
Yeah.
And it's just really as complicated as that.
Right.
So, the whole idea of one meal a day is just such a confusing concept because then
It
people try
is.
to define it and they're like, oh, well, that means 23-1. Well, no, it doesn't. If you go to a fine dining restaurant and you might have a 3-hour dining experience, but how many meals did you have in that time? One,
Right.
but it was an appetizer and then a salad course and then soup. And so if you looked at what I eat in my window, it's probably the equivalent of one restaurant meal, but it's spread out over 5 hours.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter how we define it. It's just the key is that I'm not eating too much and I'm not eating too little and I'm listening to my body and it's not the same from day to day.
Yeah. And when I've worked with, I've been working with students for many years. And what I've seen too is when they're first starting out, having some parameters and more guidelines can be
Mhm.
more important just because you're coming, like it's so opposite and so different from what you're
Right.
typically doing. It's nice to have some more parameters. But yeah, then you get a few years in and you're like, you know what, I want to eat at 10 today. Cause I now eat more like late morning. I used to always wait until afternoon, but that just works well for me. I'm a morning person. I'm in
Mhm.
bed early. Like it doesn't make sense for me to eat most of my food at nighttime when I'm going to bed around 9, like I'm total granny.
So what
Stay in
time?
bed.
I'm in bed at 9. Absolutely. What time do you finish eating for the day?
Usually at like 4 or 5. So we
I
have
usually
like an
finish around
earlier
7.
dinner.
So I
Okay,
usually
yeah.
finish eating around 7. Most days I'm done. Most days I'm done by 7 unless there's like something going on. And then
Hmm.
I go to bed around 9, but I'm just
Yeah.
like,
I just like I'm like I don't care what other people think anymore. I'm tired. I'm going
I
to
can't
bed.
stay
So
up.
yes. Okay. They also want to know two more questions and then we'll
Okay.
wrap up here. But why do you think most intermittent fasters fail? Or and we've talked some about this already, but if you
Oh,
had
I
to
can tell
like
you why.
okay,
I have a
good.
section in
Good.
there in the new book about why do people quit, and it's pretty simple. There's just some very common threads that run through. One of them is they start to look around and their friend is losing weight really, really fast on these new shots or whatever, or their friend is on this new plan and losing weight very, very quickly, and they're over there losing a half a pound to a pound a week, and then they want what their friend has got. Now, of course, we've all been down the roads of losing weight quickly before. If you lost the weight quickly and then kept it off, that would be amazing. But did we? No, I never once lost the weight through another way other than intermittent fasting and kept it off. I lost weight more quickly, lots of ways, but I never kept it off. So those things are very, very, they lure you over, and then you crash and burn eventually and gain the weight back. So that's one thing. People really have been tricked by diet culture, toxic diet culture, really, to feel like weight loss should be easy, effortless, and quick. Like I was at the grocery store a couple weeks ago, and those magazines at the checkout counter
Hate
always
them.
have crazy claims that are ridiculous. Like one of them said lose 2 pounds a day. That was the claim for this diet. Back in the day, I would be picking that up and reading it. What's the plan? What's the book? I need to get it. I need to try. You cannot lose 2 pounds of fat a day. Can't. Impossible. You could lose 2 pounds of fat in a week, but probably not. Most of our bodies lose fat at the rate of a half a pound to a pound a week, no matter, even if you didn't eat at all, which of course is not what we recommend. We don't lose fat quickly. So having those unrealistic expectations or seeing what your friend is doing is one reason people quit. They feel like they're not losing weight and it's not as fast as they want. Another reason is the clean fast. People who are not fasting clean struggle. And it's, I talked before about feeling emotionally linked to treats and food. I did not realize, I guess I should have, because I used to drink lattes all the time. But when I learned about insulin response and what fasting really was after I read the obesity code, my brain went, okay. And so I understood why I was fasting suddenly. It wasn't just about calories anymore. I understood about, the benefits of the clean fast, even though we didn't call it the clean fast until 2017. I didn't want to give that up for a little creamy coffee, but there are a lot of people out there. And then they might watch a YouTube video where someone says 50 calories of cream doesn't matter. It doesn't break the fast. You can have it. And then eventually they're no longer fasting because they gave into that lure of the emotional feeling of the creamy coffee and the idea that it's okay. Someone said it didn't matter. And then before you know it, they're not fasting at all. So the clean fast really does matter. And then again, it was the people who go on vacation or they have a holiday and they're like, I'm just not going to fast while I'm on this trip. And then they come back and then they just never start again. They never push that window back. They got used to eating breakfast on the cruise ship. Now they're eating breakfast every day. And they're like, well, I tried to fast and it was hard and now I can't. And so, you got to go back through a little adaptation, deplete those glycogen stores and have a few hard days, but you can do it. So those are the reasons why intermittent fasting, fails. It just has to do with our expectations, whether we're fasting clean, and the whole idea of just, if we stop and then it feels hard to start again. But you know what feels hard? What feels hard is moving through the day in a body that is unwell metabolically and thinking about the guilt of should I eat again? Am I eating? And having that constant food chatter. That's way harder. So you have to pick your hard, right? We remember that quote, and I know you've seen it before. I didn't make it up, but it's been around a long time. But being overweight is hard, dieting is hard. Pick your hard. And of course, intermittent fasting is not a diet. It's a way of eating. It's, dieting is what you eat. Intermittent fasting is when. But we could go back to that. Being overweight is hard. Eating all day and having that chatter in your head is hard. Intermittent fasting can also be hard. Pick your hard. But the beauty of it is when you're adapted to intermittent fasting and you have that mindset of, I am an intermittent faster, you're physically adapted, you're emotionally adapted, you're in the habit of doing it, it's not hard. It stops being so hard. That doesn't mean every minute is going to, be a cakewalk. We're going to a wedding this weekend, and staying in a hotel that I know has an amazing free breakfast, because last time I stayed there, I decided to have it. And I hadn't eaten a breakfast at 8:30 in the morning in a long, long time. So I decided to have it. It was delicious. I was sluggish the whole rest of the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did I eat that? And then I was hungry all the time. That was harder than if I had skipped the breakfast. So when I wake up on Sunday morning and the free breakfast is there, I'm not going to have it. I know what breakfast tastes like. I can have breakfast for dinner if I want to. I've experienced that hotel's breakfast. It is not going to be hard. Now, I'll probably sit there with my husband. He may or may not eat. He doesn't normally eat till 11. Our son will be there with us. He'll probably eat the free breakfast. Will it be hard for me to sit there and watch one or both of them eat? No, because I already know I will not feel my best if I choose to eat that. I could if I wanted to. So the hard goes away as far as like that struggle. You always can choose to eat if you want to, but it's not hard to not.
Yeah, and it's important to, like you said, not to compare to yourself to others and
Yes.
how quickly they're moving through things.
Yeah.
And even the weight thing, it's like people want to lose weight, but coming from somebody, I was never, I gained 25 or 30 pounds with each of my pregnancy, and that was no walk in the park to get back in shape and to the point that I was before. But even as somebody who has never been overweight, I was not metabolically well. Like
Right.
I had a really hard time admitting that to myself. And when I got my fasting insulin back the first time I tested it, and I'd already been on this lifestyle for 2 years and it was still elevated. I'm like, what? Like, you gotta be kidding me.
You
But
remember
that
what it
explains.
was?
So after 2 years of intermittent fasting and therapeutic carb restriction, where I mean, I'm not crazy about my carbs. I'm not like ketogenic. I keep
Right.
them somewhere around 100-ish. Again, I don't count them, but that's about like 100 or less is typically where I'm at. Mine was 10.7
Oh, wow.
after 2 years. Yes.
Wow.
So
So I
I have
wonder what it
no idea.
was.
Me too. I wish, like, I didn't know to check it, of course.
Right.
And how old was I? I think I was like 44 when I first
Okay.
checked it. So I was probably insulin resistant. I mean, I'd
Oh,
been like
yeah.
food thoughts and having to eat all day for 20 years. And I'm guessing
Wow.
it was in the 20s, somewhere in
Yep.
there, which is pretty severe. And
Yeah.
the last time I checked it, I need to check it again, but it was 7.5. So it was almost
Okay.
in
Coming in
the
the right
normal range. And
direction.
that's been over a year. So I need to get it checked again. It's been like a year and a half. So I would be surprised if it's now not
Mhm.
in the healthy range, but I was at metabolically well. So keep that in mind too. It's not about all about weight. It's about
Right.
being metabolically well, and hardly anybody is.
It's
And
true.
just
Yeah.
it's under 10%, but yeah, you will get there, and it
Yeah.
takes time, and it just takes time and patience. So the last question, and then we'll wrap up, and this is more personal, so if you want to say I don't really want to answer that,
I
but
share a lot. So,
I'm thinking you've talked about this on your podcasts before for sure, but have you gone through menopause and
oh,
did
yeah.
you see changes around that time where you had to modify
Oh, I
or
talk about this
did
all the time. I'm
okay.
so happy to talk about this. Yeah, I went through menopause at 51, which is the exact average age. So
Yep.
totally average. Um, and I'm now 54. So I'm on the other side. And yeah, your body changes. Like I am a little thicker around the midsection than I was. I think my very, very leanest was 2018. I started intermittent fasting 2014, lost the weight. 2018, I think that's when my waist measurement was the smallest. And then went through menopause, all the, obviously you don't go through menopause just bam overnight. It's a process. Perimenopause, your body is changing hormonally. It's when you got the sweating and all that's going on that we know about. But, when I got to the other side, I was so excited. I was like, all right, it's been a year, no period, menopause. I'm officially there. And because that's what we think is the only thing that is just no more periods. Well, um, I have a good friend, Dr. Tabitha Barber. She's a
Yeah,
functional
yeah.
medicine, Tabitha. She's
Yeah,
an
my daughter
OBGYN.
works with her actually, so we know her very well. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're
My daughter, she has
oh,
polycystic ovarian syndrome,
okay.
and Dr. Tabitha has helped her finally reverse it.
Well, Tabitha's amazing. I mean, she's a real friend of mine. Like, we were in Park City, Utah in June of 2020. When was that? Okay, 2023, 2022, June of 2022. And I wasn't on any hormone replacement therapy at all. I was just cruising along, but I was having issues, suddenly bedroom issues. Women that have been through it know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Painful
yeah.
sex. I'm just going to say it. and I'd had trouble before. Never. And I'm like, I mean, it was very painful to the point I'm like, sorry, closed for business, kind of painful. Nothing I could do about that. And also, noticing skin elasticity changes, not just, but also my face and everywhere, starting to get crepey and wrinkly and all of that. And Tabitha was like, you have got to get on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or you're going to start to age so quickly, and you're just going to age. And so she became my doctor and she ran my hormones, and sure enough, they were terrible. And she put me on, the bioidentical patch and progesterone. And let's just say that changed everything. But here's what's interesting. She, did a full profile of everything. My fasting insulin and my A1C were up. Like, I
I
had
bet.
had them, yep, I had had them checked prior to going through menopause. My fasting insulin was a 4.9. My A1C was beautiful. Everything was perfect. Then I went through menopause, and I wasn't doing anything differently with my fasting at all. Suddenly my fasting insulin was 5 point something. I mean, it's still not terrible, but it was elevated compared to what it had been. My A1C was pre-diabetic. Okay, all of a sudden.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? So we tested again 3 months after she got me started on the bioidentical hormones. First of all, everything was corrected down below. Let's just say I noticed my skin looked better, less crepiness, but my fasting insulin was back below 5. My A1C was back down to normal. I didn't make any dietary changes. I just started the bioidentical hormones, didn't change my fasting. So that opened my eyes to hormones are more than just whether you get your period or not, or whether you're going to be able to have a baby anymore. It's so much more than that. We need estrogen and progesterone for, maintaining our muscle mass. We need it for our skin, collagen building. We need those hormones. And we had been so confused by some flawed adaptations of the Women's Health Initiative study that, back in the day. And so people were really confused about hormones in women. But all the women that I know, I'm in a group. It's like a health and wellness professionals. We get together and we have events together and conferences. And every female that's in that group, like Dr. Anna Kubeka went through it, Tabitha's in there with me, but there's a good number of hormone experts in there, probably names you would recognize. And every single woman who's on the other side of menopause is using bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. All of them. All of them. And that tells me everything I want to know. I'm not a hormone expert. Thank goodness I don't have to be, but I know people who are, and
Yeah.
all of them are doing it. And they're like, I'm never going to stop doing it. And, because we want to have healthy bones, and our hormones help us to have healthy bones, help healthy cardiovascular systems. Doctors don't know it. And to hear Tabitha talk about that, she wasn't trained as a surgeon. That's what OBGYNs are. She had to go back and learn about hormones and how powerful they are. In fact, we just had her yesterday. We talked to her for our Fast Feast Repeat podcast. It's coming out December 10th on the Fast Feast Repeat podcast with Tabitha, and all about women. I'm sure you get those questions too. Is fasting bad for women? I'm using my quotation marks here. And Tabitha explained, no, it actually is not bad for women hormonally. And, to hear that whole discussion, look for Fast Feast Repeat episode 28. But
28.
yep, January 10th, that one comes out. But,
Okay.
People who understand fasting and understand hormones, and like she said, all women should be like time restricted eating. All women, unless you're pregnant, all women should be, or breastfeeding, should be doing some form of time restricted eating. All. And, there's the train of thought that women need to like do things differently or fast around your cycle. Tabitha's like, no.
I know. And you do it just gets people so confused. So
And I
it's
mean,
so
there's a
hard.
book that came out not that long ago that like fast around your cycle. And but Tabitha explained, no, there's no need to do any of that. But
Yeah, the whole wrecking the hormones from fasting, I'm just like, oh, it drives me nuts.
I mean, how many people have you worked with, especially PCOS, people with insulin resistant, and fasting corrects their hormonal imbalances, and now they are regular again for the
Yes.
first time. And so, I mean, did it wreck their hormones? Well, no. We also have a lot of surprise pregnancies in our fasting community. People who were not trying, thought they couldn't get pregnant. Now suddenly they're pregnant. They're like, oh, I got to quit fasting because I'm pregnant.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you for your all the honesty. Like that was a a
Well,
beautiful answer.
I tell that story everywhere because I think that it's important. I believe that women should be talking about what we're going through,
Yes.
and it should not be shrouded in mystery. And you should not be having painful sex just because you're on the
Right.
other side of menopause and like, oh well, that's just what happens. No, you can correct it. And I wanted to check and see, you filled out the form with your update for the. You're
Yes.
actually there. I wanted to tell you
Somebody
your
told me
pages.
that. I'm like, oh, really?
You're there. You're on pages 50 to 52. There's your
Okay.
story. So you're on day. I'll tell you what day you're on. I'm flipping to it. I finally got this copy with the index.
Now, this is your book we're talking about that my
It is. So
story's in there.
you
Yeah.
were there. You were episode 109, and you were the daily inspiration spotlight. Oh, you're on day 1. You're the daily
Oh,
inspiration
look at
spotlight
that.
for day 1. There is your
I love it.
story. I got my bad fingernail, smashed it in a door. So it's almost grown out.
Beautiful. Oh, well, thanks. I was going to ask you about that, but I didn't want to do it on air just in
Yeah,
case. I'm
you're
like,
there.
oh, well,
Every
that's
day
fun.
there's
That's
an
fun.
update from a past intermittent fasting stories guest. And I think that's so powerful because
Yeah.
you see that, someone who I interviewed in 2018, is still doing it. And here's how he's doing or she's doing. And
Yeah.
here's what they've learned. And every day that the past guest, you can see what episode they were on and go listen to it if you want. But also they have advice for the new intermittent faster, or like something for you. So
Yeah, I'm excited to read it because I can't remember what I wrote.
well, it was
So
good.
that will be fun.
I hope I said your name right in the audiobook. I had to do some pickups at the end where I had to go back and read some things. And one of them is I had to say your name again. So,
I always say it's Shanna like banana. So then people
yeah,
usually
well,
remember, but
yeah, it
yeah.
might
So
have been
we'll
your
see.
last name that I said wrong. I don't
Yes.
know, but I hope it's right. But names are hard.
Oh,
Names are
they
hard.
are. And it's been slaughtered my whole life. So, I've heard
I'm
it all.
sure.
But yeah, and then Dr. Tabitha has her own podcast called Gutsy Gynecologist.
Yep.
And we worked with her for a while. She was on my podcast. I can't, of course, off the top of my head, I have no idea what episode it was, but it was a really great episode. And so my daughter's struggled with PCOS for the last couple of years since she went to college, basically. I mean, she had some issues
Yeah.
before that, but college life just
Oh,
exacerbated everything. And we did a lot of interventions, and Dr. Tabitha helped us put like the final pieces together. And
good.
she's now
Well, she's
gotten her
fabulous.
period 3 months in a row, and she's so
See?
happy.
And
It's like
your daughter's doing some fasting.
she had been doing some intermittent fasting prior, but she had a bunch of food sensitivities that we
Right.
weren't aware of, and that was just kind of
That makes a
causing
difference.
inflammation. And yeah, so there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Well, it has been a delightful conversation. I love the whole, all of your books, because like you said, like this last one, the 28-day fast start, you could refer back to your other books if you weren't
Right.
quite ready for more, like you said, a lot of information coming in the fast feast repeat and the cleanish, but now you can refer back to those. So it's a beautiful setup. Maybe it didn't make as much sense going through the process, but now it does. So
Right.
being able to refer back to all of those books. But yeah, we've learned a ton today. We always learn a ton from you. We have 2 podcasts. Go back and learn more there. What was your favorite book to write? I'm just curious.
That's interesting. It's hard to say. I really enjoyed writing this new one, 28-day fast start day by day. I really enjoyed writing it. The teacher in me came out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it might be this, it might be this one. I really also enjoyed writing Fast Feast Repeat. I'm really proud of Fast Feast Repeat. I look at it and I'm like, how was I able to pull this out of
Yes.
me? That was a lot. It was a lot of researching. I worked really hard on that one, and I wrote it myself. I learned part of this community that I'm in is most of those books you see were not written by the person whose name is on the cover. There's a lot of
Interesting.
like people. I didn't know that. I was like, what? You didn't write that? Because I was like, who's your ghostwriter? I'm like, what? No, I do not have a ghostwriter. Every bit of it I wrote it myself. And so, but I'm really proud of Fast Feast Repeat. I'm also really proud of it's a really good book, and I think it's helped a lot of people. I'm really proud of Delayed on Denied, the first one that I wrote.
Yeah.
I wrote it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a teacher. I self-published it, but I think it still stands the test of time, and people still love that book and they're still buying it. So
Yeah, I love it just because it was so applicable and
yeah.
just if you want to get started
Yep.
and get the process behind it quickly, it's a great one. It's a great resource. So I still refer people to that one. It's like I have my book and there's all kinds of fasting books, but I think that's a great one to start with. So,
Well,
well,
I think
thanks.
you'll find 28-day fast start day by day is going to be the one you'll send people to first now. I mean, I really think that it is. It's going to, I hope, change the cycle of starting and stopping and really help people get started. You got to have that firm foundation.
Yeah, yeah. And that is such the biggest issue for so many
Yeah.
people is just getting it to stick. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to talk with you again. And thanks for all the work that you are doing. Fabulous books. Go find
Thank
them.
you.
Her new book will be out by the time that this airs. And of course, the podcasts. I binge listen to so many podcasts. That's just depending on what kind of learner you are, audio, visual, reading,
Mhm.
whatever. So you have it all. So any other one more, I should ask you too. You talked about your community. Any other places where you'd like me to send people if
Well,
they want to
yeah.
learn more about
Just
what you
go
offer?
to jenstevens.com. Jen is GIN, Stevens with a PH, jenstevens.com. There's links there to my community, jenstevens.com/community. It's a paid community, but it's like $9.99 a month. It's not expensive. We found that's just enough to keep out the people that are going to
Yeah,
come in,
yeah,
like on Facebook. We know we've been in Facebook
yep,
groups. I don't really need to get into that, but people who are there are serious about it because they are there looking for support, and they also are there to give support. So it's a very positive place to be. And I'm there every day. Sometimes people are like surprised that I reply to every post that people make, and I really am in there giving you advice and helping you through any struggles, and also cheering you on when you're having successes. But it's just such a great community, and I love doing it. And then my podcasts, they're linked. You can find them on my website. But if you just go to any podcast app, you could type in Jen Stevens, or you could just type in intermittent fasting and you'll find them. Intermittent fasting stories. I think I recorded episode 391 yesterday, and Fast Feast Repeat, intermittent fasting for life. I do that podcast with co-host Sherry Bullock. We started that one this year in July. And like I said, episode 28, we just recorded that one yesterday, and that one will come out in January. But I really enjoy doing both of the podcasts and running the community. I saw that little visitor in the background. He turned around real
that's my
fast.
college boy who just got home yesterday, and he's like,
Oh,
"Oh."
have fun with him. He was like, woo.
Oh, yeah. He's like, "Oh, she's still talking." I have headphones on, so he probably couldn't hear you. So anyway,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt with
that's
that.
okay. I got boys too. So
Well, beautiful. We'll send everybody to jenstevens.com and your
thank
book
you.
will be available everywhere. So thanks for all the work that you're doing. It was a really fun conversation.
Thank you.